love, longing, and the messy stuff in between. Go Fish, 1994, isn't your typical love story. It's a harsh, unromanticized, and very realistic account of queer relationships in the 90s. A visually groundbreaking, dialogue-based film, it's a film that comes down to the heart, the confusion, and the inescapable force of attraction. Our story happens in Chicago and brings us the confident, outspoken, and impatient lesbian Max navigating the ins and outs of love. Max is a screenwriter with her own very particular idea of what love is and how it will be. The way it has so far, unfortunately, not taken her to the right person. Yet, enter Ely, a mousy, quiet woman who seems like a universe unto herself. She's got a retro kind of charm, the sort that makes her seem like she's been pulled from another era, but she moves through the world with a quiet assurance. There's something irresistibly fascinating about her, a stillness, an intelligence that smolders behind her introspective eyes, and a sense of moving through the world as if she's watching more than she's engaging. She's not the loudest individual in the room, but she doesn't have to be. Her presence can be felt even in silence. And she has a girlfriend. Well, sort of. Kate is more idea than presence. She exists in letters, in phone calls that are increasingly intermittent, in the spaces between commitment and uncertainty. The distance between them isn't physical, it's emotional, reaching out into something Ely can't quite define. Is she in love? Is Kate? Or are they just holding on to something they know because it's familiar, afraid to let go even as the threads fray? Ely doesn't let those questions get to her, at least not outwardly. She's become used to operating in the grey areas of love, accustomed to yearning being a given. But even she can't deny the restlessness that creeps in, the curiosity of what's out there, the soft scratching of temptation when something new comes along. And then Max. Max, opinionated, fearless, and quick with a well-timed quip or a friendly jab. She's the sort of woman who takes up space with no hesitation, never afraid to say exactly what's on her mind. She's disarming in a thoroughly unmanufactured manner, radiating an energy that's both appealing and, at times, exhausting. She's not just comfortable in her skin, she thrives within it, surrounded by a small circle of women who understand her, challenge her, and love her. Their worlds collide in the most unexpected of ways, through a little matchmaking mischief from their well-meaning friends. A casual setup, a nudge in the right direction, a just meet her, you'll like her kind of situation. But here's the catch. Max isn't immediately smitten. Ely is not your average woman Max has been accustomed to dating. She is quiet where Max is boisterous, contemplative where Max is impulsive. Max has always imagined herself with another person, someone tougher, someone more like her, someone who is smouldering with that flame the moment she sees her. Ely, being the laid-back kind and peace-giving in her presence, doesn't strike her as a romance option. At least, not yet. Because love, as we know it, tends to surprise us when we are least prepared. It lingers in the stolen looks, in the late-night talks that carry over into the early morning, in the unspoken knowledge that forms between two individuals before either of them even realizes what is happening. And so, unaware, Max starts noticing things about Ely, the way she listens, the way she inclines her head a quarter of an inch when she is in thought, the way her laughter is rare but completely unarming when it comes. There is something about her solidity, something about the way she sees the world that begins to unsettle Max in a way which she cannot shake. Ely also is caught off guard by the turn. She wasn't looking for this. She wasn't looking to discover someone who makes her feel like she is stepping into the unknown, where every minute is packed with something she is too scared to call. And yet, they are there. Two women who were not intended to fall in love with each other. Two women who do not exactly compute on paper, but who can possibly, just possibly, compute in the way that truly counts. If only they're strong enough to make it happen. Their initial encounters are easy, almost ordinary. Chats about books, girlfriends, and midnight rumination that sound light-hearted enough on the surface. But underlying the talk is something else. A quiet undertow of possibility. An unexpressed feeling that neither Max nor Ely is quite ready to acknowledge yet. Max, the ever-confident and obstinate heart, keeps Ely at a comfortable distance. Not because she doesn't like her, but because she can't see her as the kind of person who fits into the picture that she's so carefully constructed in her head. Ely is soft-spoken, subdued, understated, whereas Max is drawn to the flashy, the outspoken, the women with a certain coolness that doesn't even attempt. But chemistry is outside of attraction's rules. It simmers under their conversations, erupting in stolen glances, hesitant laughter, and pauses that are only slightly longer than they should be. Ely is not blind to Max's charm, though. She notices the way Max enters a room, the way she takes charge, the way her presence shifts the atmosphere around her. But Ely is wary, guarded. She's lingered too long in the in-between spaces of love, waiting for Kate to phone, waiting for things to become clear that never quite do. Falling for Max, even thinking about it, is perilous in a way that thrills and unsettles her. The film spends its time with this change. It dwells in the quiet moments, the way Max absent-mindedly plays with the ring on her finger while Ely is talking, the way Ely's breath catches a little when Max floats by her. These are not big or showy things. They're soft and lingering and painfully real. As they orbit one another, uncertain and drawn in simultaneously, the world at large enriches their story. Go Fish is more than it's about Max and Ely. It's about the lesbian universe in which they live. A complex, beautiful, highly intertwined system of friends, exes, and lovers. The movie seamlessly weaves together moments of deep conversations on identity and relationships, capturing the true complexities of queer love in a way that is lived in instead of staged. Coffeehouse conversations and dimly lit apartments touch on everything from monogamy to the politics of desire, from fear of labels to first loves. They're not ambient background. They're the connective threads between Max and Ely's universe, shaping their opinions and, in many senses, bringing them together. And so the slow burn goes, not with universal confessions or blast passion, but with incremental, almost invisible erosion of resistance. Max begins to see Ely in a new light, not as a person she's being pushed towards, but one she actually wishes to know. Ely, for her part, allows herself to imagine a love that isn't built on waiting and uncertainty, but on presence, on something tangible and real. The tension builds in the silences between them, in the unspoken things, in the glances that mean more than either of them is ready to admit. Love does not come in a rush. It comes in fragments, in doubt, in moments that are small but change everything. And in Go Fish, it is in these areas that magic is created. It doesn't occur suddenly. It never does. Love tends to creep up in the most ordinary of moments, the ones that aren't until all of a sudden they are. For Max, in fragments, which is brought to him. A laugh he'll recall a lifetime after she leaves Ely's. A scene he'll play 1,000 times in his mind, examining its significance. An unspoken encounter in a crowded area that carries more weight, is heavy with subtext. Then, the awareness, sharp, unavoidable, and terrifying. Max sees Ely anew, no longer just friend, no longer just acquaintance on the periphery of her existence. She is the world, or at least might be. More than a passing infatuation, more than an immediate attraction. The connection is there, it sparkles, and suddenly it's improbable, but apparent. With precision, though, comes terror. Max is not used to this. She's worked so hard constructing this idea of how love is going to be, this idea of attraction, that she never imagined that it would materialize in such a package as this, sudden, covert, and unavoidable. The terror insinuates itself, formulating questions. What if there isn't anything? What if she gets wounded? What if she ruins the whole thing? Ely, ever patient, ever steady, senses the doubt. She doesn't push, doesn't nag. She simply is with Max, giving space to work it out. But the tension lingers between them in the air, thick with possibility. A brief brush of fingers as a coffee cup is passed. A hesitation a fraction too long in the doorway after goodbyes. An expression that says it all neither of them is yet brave enough to voice aloud. Their path is not without blemish. Love never is. Go Fish is not only a romance, it's a lesbian cultural time capsule of the 90s, a film that takes risks, is deeply personal and introspective. It's not Hollywood glamorized love with huge gestures and bow-tied conclusions. It's instead a gritty, unapologetic investigation into queer love, identity, and community. It surprises, defies convention, and offers a truthful window into the lived experience of queer women discovering love, friendship, and themselves in a world that all too often tries to forget them. In contrast to much of the LGBTQ+ cinema of its time, Go Fish doesn't revolve around tragedy or external conflict as the foundation of its narrative. There isn't some looming threat of violence, some melodramatic coming-out scene full of tension. Instead, the movie focuses on the inner turmoil of its characters, the uncertainty, the second-guessing, the exhilarating but terrifying feeling of falling in love when you least expect to. The film shows love in its most vulnerable, cringe-worthy, and beautiful presentation, where emotional vulnerability is placed under the spotlight. With a grainy black and white aesthetic, the film takes on a quasi-documentary realism, so that every line of script, every melancholy look, and every dropped word sounds lived in and true. It's not about the love affair of Max and Ely. It's about the entire community that surrounds them. It's about dinner table talk, late-night identity and representation discussions, the shared past and experiences that bind these women to one another. The film is not just a romance. It builds a world, a space in which queer women can look at themselves reflected back in ways that they were never reflected when it was being made. But all beneath that, the question lingers. Does Max jump? Does Ely receive the love she's seeking? The answer is not presented in sweeping statements or in big dramatic gestures. Instead, it happens in small, deeply human moments. An unfolding awareness between two women who were never ever supposed to fall in love with one another, but did. Max, who'd spent so long resisting the possibility of Ely as a love interest, at last allows herself to see what had been in front of her all along. And Ely, who waited for something more, learns that love does not always arrive the way we wait for it. It arrives the way we need it. There is beauty in the way Go Fish embodies this epiphany. Love, of course, isn't always love at first sight pyrotechnics or sudden epiphanies. Sometimes it's a simmer. Sometimes it's the gentle revelation of something that has been there the whole time, just waiting to be seen. Sometimes it's looking at someone you believed you knew and looking at them, truly looking at them, for the first time. And that's exactly what happens with Max and Ely. At the end of the film, there isn't a big finale, a neat ending where all loose threads are tied up into each other. There is instead a feeling of possibility, of beginnings. The uncertainty is not infuriating, it's fitting. It's the way life is, where love never goes in a straight line and relationships are always changing. That could be why Go Fish is such a timeless one. It's not so much about finding love. It's about the act of opening oneself up to it. It's about the manner in which love provokes us, remakes us, compels us to re-examine our assumptions about others and ourselves. It's about community, about the friendships that support us and the conversations that make us larger. It's about representation, not the kind that conforms to mainstream ideals, but the kind that exists on its own terms, unapologetic and true to itself. When the credits roll, we're left with more than just a love story. We're left with a snapshot of a time, a place, and a group of women who, in their own ways, are navigating what it means to love and be loved. And that's why Go Fish remains a love story like no other. Because love, in all its messy, unpredictable, beautifully imperfect forms, is never just about romance. It's about discovery, about connection, about daring to take the leap, even when you're not sure where you'll land. That's our recap for today. What do you think about this movie? Let us know in the comments below, and we will see you again here on Sapphic Nook.